بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. I'd like to begin by thanking everyone for taking out their time tonight and coming here. Inshallah, you guys will benefit tremendously from this program and from the following program, which is after Isha, inshallah. So to begin with, I actually want to ask some of our audience here what they know about Istikhaara, what they've heard about Istikhaara, or if they have any idea or any sort of understanding on how Istikhaara is performed or what Istikhaara exactly is. Do we have any volunteers?
Yeah, we know that.
Without looking in the paper.
Yeah. That's that, of course, you have to decide something.
Yeah.
And you ask for you.
Yeah.
You suffer, and then you think what I do this dua over there. And of course, people think that you will see the dream, but it's not necessary. You will see the dream, or if it's good for you. And it's not that only you have to do once.
Yeah.
Decide this dua so many times. And then your heart inclined to, if it's good for you, or if sometimes you don't, but it is, of course, you consult with Allah, whether then you go back if your heart says you can go and do that. That's how we do that, I don't know.
Inshallah, so today what we'll be doing is we'll be discussing all these topics, and like the flyer says, we'll be going over the definition of Istikhaara, the correct procedure, the method, and finally we'll be going over some of the myths and the misconceptions people have regarding Istikhaara. So to begin with, let's start off by mentioning the importance of Istikhaara. Now, Istikhaara itself isn't mentioned in the Quran, but looking at the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالُ وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ عَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. That fighting has been enjoined upon you while it is hateful to you. Meaning there was a time in the seerah of Rasulullah during the time of the Muslims when after they migrated from Mecca, they went to Medina, and now it was no longer beneficial for them, or it was no longer acceptable for them to just remain patient. Now, if they wanted to protect themselves, if they wanted to actually stay alive, they had to protect themselves through military warfare. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving them the command and the permission that now it is time for you to take up arms and actually fight. No longer, this concept of patience and just, stay with it or tolerate it. You are no longer in Makkah. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to say that perhaps you hate a thing and it is good for you, and perhaps you love a thing and it is bad for you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best while you know not. And this is the key point over here. This is the highlighting factor over here, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us something, that we have limited knowledge, whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is alimul ghayb, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-alim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has complete knowledge of, infinite knowledge of what was, what is, and what will happen. And, just naturally, a person will always consult someone who has higher knowledge than him. In fact, one of the hadiths of Rasulullah ﷺ, it says, "Min sa'adati ibn Adam istikharatuhu Allah, wa min shiqwatihi tarkuhu istikharatullah." That from the good fortune of the son of Adam is that he performs istikhara, that he consults Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala regarding his decisions. And from his bad fortune is that he leaves out istikhara. He does not consult Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala regarding his decisions. Another thing to consider is that many of us, we have one of these misconceptions that Istikhaara is only for, we have this understanding that Istikhaara is only for, very important things such as marriage or, if we're going to buy a car or buy a house. In reality, Istikhaara is a dua, and it should be utilized at every given chance. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ has been reported to have said, لِيَسْأَلْ أَحَدُكُمْ رَبَّهُ حَاجَتَهُ حَتَّى يَسْأَلُهُ الْمِلْحِ. That it is necessary for each and every single one of you to ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if it may be something as insignificant as salt, or even if it may be something as insignificant as a shoelace. So Rasulullah ﷺ is highlighting something here, that for every single one of our affairs, every single one of our matters, we have to consult Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. So going on to the definition of istikhara. Istikhara is derived from the root letters of kha, ya and ra, which means goodness. And khayr means goodness, well-being, success. So the complete meaning of istikhara means to seek success in your ambitions by consulting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the prescribed sunnah supplication. In other words, istikhara is when we read the dua, which has been narrated in the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we consult Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala regarding our decision. And inshallah we'll get into exactly how to perform istikhara. But before we move on, let's briefly speak about the benefits of istikhara. The greatest benefit of istikhara is the reliance in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this tawakkul and contentment. Rida is established in a person's life. In other words, when a person does istikhara, he is basically relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide him. He is relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show him the right way, and he is relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to assist him in all his affairs. So in the beginning, when a person performs istikhara, his reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fortified and strengthened. Then the second part, which is contentment, which is rida, meaning happiness and acceptance of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for this person. So when a person performs istikhara, then these two things are fortified and strengthened within a person. So those are just, the definition, that's the definition and the benefits of istikhara. Now let's get into the main thing, which is the procedure. Now, many of us have this understanding that when a person performs istikhara, it's going to guide him exactly which decision he should make, or a person, or sometimes people have this misconception that a person is supposed to see a dream or have some sort of inclination of the heart. But inshallah, once we read the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, once we go over the translation of this dua, we will see exactly what istikhara provides for us and exactly what the purpose of istikhara is. Now, first of all, let me read the hadith which has been narrated by Jabir ibn Abdullah radiyallahu anhu. He says, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to teach us the way of doing istikhara in all matters as he taught us the surah of the Quran. He said, if any one of you thinks of doing any job, he should offer a 2 rakah prayer other than the compulsory ones and say after the dua, meaning after that he should recite the dua of istikhara. Now, before we move on, let's just focus a little bit on this narration, on this first portion of the narration. Jabir radhiyallahu anhu is saying that the Messenger of Allah used to teach us the dua of istikhara like he would teach us surahs. That in itself shows how important istikhara is. That istikhara is not something we perform once in our lifetime. Istikhara is not something we perform, once in a month or once in a year. But istikhara, in fact, is something that if a person understands and comprehends the reality of istikhara, then it becomes something which is part of his daily life. It becomes indispensable. So Jabir radhiyallahu anhu is saying that istikhara was taught to us by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam like the way he taught us surahs. Because if a Muslim wants to pray his salah, he has to know surahs. Likewise, if a Muslim wants to develop this connection, if a Muslim wants the correct guidance in his affairs and his decision making, then he has to learn how to perform istikhara. He has to know the dua of istikhara. That's the first thing, establishing the importance of istikhara. Number 2, Rasulullah ﷺ is now teaching us the method of how to perform istikhara. He says, if any one of you thinks of doing any job, he should offer a 2 rakah salah other than the compulsory ones, meaning he should perform 2 rakah of nafil salah. So now moving on to the procedure, the first part of the procedure, and this is probably the most important thing, is that we have to understand istikhara is not going to show us or allow us or help us in making a decision. Istikhara is basically a plea from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us success. So when we do istikhara, our decision should already be made. That's the most important thing. Don't do istikhara with ambivalence, meaning, you have 2 options, you have 2 choices, and you don't know what you're going to pick, and then you do istikhara. Istikhara means you've already made up your mind. So say for example, Like, you want to buy a phone. You have Android and then you have iPhone. I mean, you don't have to make istikhara for that, but, some people do. You would obviously pick Android, but anyways, right? So say, for example, a person has, these two phones that he wants to purchase. He doesn't, and his heart goes with the iPhone. And after he has made that decision, that I will purchase this iPhone, that's when he performs the istikhara. After performing the istikhara, and once we read the meaning of this dua, there's two more over here if anybody wants, three more actually. Once we read the meaning, the translation of the dua, then we'll exactly see what we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for. So once the person has made his decision that I am going to purchase this iPhone, then he performs istikhara. And in the istikhara, this is exactly what he's asking. Let's go to the istikhara dua, where it says, Allahumma inni astakhiruka bi'ilmik wa astaqdiruka biqudratik. That, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I am seeking success and goodness through your knowledge. Wa astaqdiruka biqudratik, and I am seeking strength through your strength. Wa as'aluka min fadlika al-adim, and I am asking you of your great generosity, of your magnanimity. فَإِنَّكَ تَقْدِرُ وَلَا أَقْدِرُ, for verily you are able and I am not. وَتَعْلَمُ وَلَا أَعْلَمُ, and you are all aware and I am not all aware. وَأَنْتَ عَلَّامُ الْغُيُوبِ, and you have the knowledge of the unseen. So first, the dua starts off by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by expressing our humbleness, by expressing our need for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then here's the main part of the dua. This will inshallah clarify exactly what we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we perform istikhara. It says, Allahumma in kunta ta'lamu anna hadha al-amra khaynun li fi dini wa ma'ashi wa aqibati amri. That, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you know that this matter of mine, which I have decided. So this is the key thing. Your decision has already have to be made. So, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you know that my decision of purchasing this iPhone is good for me in my deen, regarding my livelihood, regarding the final outcome, at the end of everything, once everything has passed. If all this is good for me, فَقْدُرْهُ لِي وَيَسِّرْهُ لِي, then make this possible for me, make this possible for me, and وَيَسِّرْهُ لِي, simplify it for me. ثُمَّ بَارِكْ لِي فِي, and then bless me in my affairs. So that's what we're asking. And then, in the contrary, we go on to say, وَإِن كُنْتَ تَعْلَمُ أَنَّ هَذَا الْأَمْرَ, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you know that this matter of mine, this decision of mine, me purchasing this iPhone, شَرٌ لِي فِي دِينِي وَمَعَاشِي, is harmful for me regarding my deen, regarding my livelihood, وَعَاقِبَةِ أَمْرِي, and regarding the final outcome of everything, فَاسْرِفْهُ عَنِّي وَاسْرِفْنِي عَنْهُ, then turn it away from me and turn me away from it. وَقْدُرْهُ لِي الْخَيْرَ حَيْثُ كَانَ ثُمَّ رَدِّنِي بِهِ, and then guide me to that which is good wherever it may be and make me pleased with it. So right from the dua, right from the translation of the dua, we can see exactly what we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for. We're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I've made this decision. If this decision is good for me, then make it easy for me, facilitate all the means required, and put barakah in my decision. On the contrary, if my decision is harmful, then keep me away from it and keep it away from me. And that's all it is. Once we understand the meaning of the dua, then that's all you have to understand. So again, going back to the example, a person has two choices. A person is not sure what he should buy. He has this iPhone and then he has this Android. So he goes with the iPhone and he makes dua. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I've decided to buy this iPhone. And if this iPhone is good for me in all my affairs, then make it possible for me, simplify the matter for me to purchase this phone. On the other hand, if this iPhone is detrimental for me, then keep it away from me and keep me away from it. And then the result of whatever happens is the answer of the dua. So going on with that example, if the iPhone is good for him, then things will be simplified, things will be facilitated in his favor. So he'll be able to purchase the iPhone. He'll go into the T-Mobile store and he'll buy his iPhone. There will be no hassle, and they'll give it to him right away. On the contrary, if this iPhone is bad for him, then what will happen is exactly what we are making dua for. That keep it away from me and Keep me away from it. You go to the T-Mobile store and then the guy says, you have a bad credit line, we can't give it to you. Or, you go there and then you look at the iPhone and you're like, oh man, this is junk, right? And then you leave. So that's what the dua does. So what the dua is telling us is that, number one, if it is good for me, then make it easy for me and simplify the matter and put barakah in my affair. If it is bad for me, there's two things over here that I want everyone to focus on. Two words. It says, فَاسْرِفْهُ عَنِّي وَاسْرِفْنِي عَنْهُ. First word is, فَاسْرِفْهُ عَنِّي. That turn it away from me. Meaning, if I have an inclination towards doing something which is detrimental or harmful, then make me disinclined. Turn my heart away from it. That's number one. Number two is, وَاسْرِفْنِي عَنْهُ. And turn me away from it. Sorry, the first one is, فَاسْرِفْهُ عَنِّي. That turn it away from me. That even if I don't have any sort of inclination for it, if I'm not in favor of it, then keep it away from me. Don't let it come into my path. And if I do have some sort of inclination to it, make me disinclined towards it. In both ways. So that's what the purpose of Istikhaara is. Now, once a person understands the definition of Istikhaara, then everything becomes clear as daylight. But let's go on to the procedure. In the hadith of Rasulullah, he mentions that a person should perform 2 rakats of nafl. Now, this 2 rakats of nafl is actually optional. The best way to perform Istikhaara is according to the hadith, meaning he should perform the 2 rakats of nafl, then he should read the dua, and then he should carry on with whatever he needs to. But let's just say, a person is in a rush, or he doesn't have wudu, or he's in a certain situation where he is not able to perform 2 rakats of nafl salah. So what does he do? He can simply suffice on reciting the dua. Then the dua must be read. If he is going to read the 2 rakats of nafl, then the dua should be read after the nafl. So it's actually a dua. And then finally, after that, after the dua has been read, then it's execution of the decision, meaning just go ahead and carry on with whatever you have to do. Now, just one thing to keep in mind is when we're reading this dua, there are 2 places over here. It says, أَنَّ هَذَا الْأَمْرَ, that this decision of mine. When you get to that spot, then you're actually supposed to verbally say exactly what decision you've taken, what your decision is. So, say for example, going back to the phone story. Let's for example, we have the 2 phones, and now I've decided that I'm going to go with the iPhone. I perform my 2 rakats of salah. Then I'm reading this dua. Allahumma inni astakhiruka bi'ilmik wa astaqdiruka biqudratik wa as'aluka min fadlika al-'azim fa innaka taqdiru wa la aqdir wa ta'lamu wa la a'lam wa anta 'allamul ghuyub. Allahumma in kunta ta'lamu anna hadha al-amra. So once you reach this, then you're actually supposed to verbally say out that, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this matter of me, this decision of mine to purchase this phone. And then likewise, when you get to the next place, anna hadha al-amra, again you're supposed to actually verbally say the decision you've taken. So now let's get on to the results and the outcome. The results and the outcome of this is, if what you had intended was good, it will be simplified and accomplished. Right? So if your decision was a decision which is good for you, then it will be simplified and you will be able to accomplish your task, your matter with ease. On the other hand, if your decision was detrimental or harmful, then you will be protected and guided to the right path. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect you from making the wrong decision. Right? If you make a decision that now let's get into a different example. You have 2 cars. You want to buy a Toyota and a Honda. Right? You've made your decision that you want to buy a Toyota, and then you perform your Istikhaara, and in reality Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that this Honda car is bad for you. So then when you go to purchase this Honda, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala somehow guides you away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pulls you away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may just make it such that you go there and the place is closed, or you go there and then they see that your credit line is bad, or whatever happens, So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides you. He pulls you away from harm, and He guides you to the path which is beneficial for you. So Istikhaara is not a plea to be informed of the unseen. Rather, it's a plea to grant you success and protection from the wrong choices. And that's the main thing to understand about Istikhaara. That Istikhaara is not a plea to be informed of the unseen. Rather, it's a plea to grant you success and protection from the wrong choices. Now, getting on to some other things that, say for example, a person does not have time to read this dua. He's in a rush. The person is in a rush, and he only has a matter of seconds. Or he or she has a matter of seconds. What's the next best option? The next best option is he can read a mini version of this dua, which is Allahumma khirli wa khtarli, which means, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, grant me good and guide me and choose for me. Right? So Allahumma khirli wa khtarli means, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give me good and guide me and choose for me. Right? That's the mini version of the original dua. But like we said, the best way to perform it is according to the hadith, where a person performs 2 rakats of salah. Then after the salah, he reads the dua of Istikhaara, and then he goes on to do his actions, right? But in another scenario, if he does not have time to perform his salah, if he doesn't have wudu, or the circumstances are just not suitable where he can perform his salah, he can simply suffice on reading the long dua. Or in another situation where there's no time to read the long dua at all, a person can simply suffice on reading the small dua, the mini version of the dua, which is Allahumma khirli wa khtarli. So now let's move on to the misconceptions and myths, right? The first misconception, and this is the worst, that people think that after I perform my istikhaara, I'm going to see a dream. And in this dream, it's going to guide me to exactly what I have to do, or I'm going to see some weird colors, or whatever it may be. When you read the hadith, there's no mentioning, or there's nothing regarding a dream. This is something which people have just made up. This is just something which is, by word of mouth, that people just like, making things very romantic and very, fascinating, So there's no such thing as a dream. Remember, the purpose of this dua, the purpose of istikhaara is us asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from harm. That's all it is, So there's no concept of, seeing a dream. If you see a dream, good for you, but, the hadith does not speak about seeing a dream. Number 2, inclination of the heart must be felt. Meaning, after I perform istikhaara, then my heart should be inclined towards a certain decision. And this in itself is incorrect, because before we even perform the istikhaara, we are already supposed to make up our mind. The purpose of the istikhaara is if we're inclined towards doing something harmful for us, then may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala disincline us, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from it. It's not the other way around, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make us inclined towards such an action. So there is no, inclination of the heart. The next misconception is can only be performed before bedtime. And this is in relation with the first one, that, people think that istikhaara should only be performed before you go to bed. And then once you perform it, you don't speak to anyone, and you go to sleep, and then you see a dream. And you keep on performing istikhaara until you see a dream. That is not correct. You can perform istikhaara anytime during the day. Okay? Anytime, anywhere. As long as you know the dua, you're fine. Right? The next thing, asking a pious person to perform it on your behalf. All these things, making dua for ourselves, performing the istikhaara, these things are, our personal devotions, our personal relationships with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Istikhaara should not be, given to someone else. Just because another person is very pious, or, if the person is the imam of the community, don't come to me and say, please perform my istikhaara. I don't want to make your decisions for you. Right? You can buy an iPhone, no problem. Right? And then next thing is doing istikhaara for evil actions. Right? It doesn't work like that. Istikhaara is only for things which are considered permissible. You cannot perform istikhaara for evil actions. You cannot say, tomorrow I'm going to Atlantic City, where should I gamble? Right? Not for that. Or you cannot make istikhaara for, tomorrow, I don't know, should I wake up for Fajr or not? Nothing like that. Istikhaara is for things which are permissible and which are not farad, right? Which are not already compulsory. So like I said, example, you have 2 cars. You make the decision to buy car A, and then you perform this istikhaara, and you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if my decision is good for me in this world, in the hereafter, and my final outcome, then make this purchasing of the car easy for me and put barakah in it. Otherwise, if this purchasing of the car is detrimental for my deen, for my hereafter and my final outcome, then keep it away from me and keep me away from it. And guide me towards that which is good for me and make me pleased with it. And that's all istikhaara is. And then whatever happens after that. But again, going back, that istikhara is something which should be performed on a daily basis, because we all have, decisions we make on a daily basis. So istikhara can be used on a daily basis. It shouldn't just be reserved for special occasions before you get married. Sometimes another complaint is that, I performed istikhara and now, nothing is going well for me. Before a person gets married, he performs istikhara and then he ends up marrying that girl or boy, and then they end up getting a divorce. So you have to first look at the entire situation, that you are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide you. You are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep harm away from you. If a person is going to be negligent, if a person is going to be, despite seeing so many signs, if a person still goes after the girl or the boy, then he's throwing himself into harm. Number one. Number two, let's just say, everything went well and the marriage went well, and then eventually there was a breakup, eventually there was a divorce. That doesn't necessarily mean it's evil. Again, the dua is saying my final outcome, if it can be good. So the final outcome is not the end of this marriage, but the final outcome can be something else. So it's just a dua where we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from our own harm. Because as we know, as we've read right in the beginning, that as human beings we have limited knowledge. We are very myopic, we are very short-sighted. We can't see past our noses. So we rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us, to protect us from our own harms and from making the wrong choices. And that's all istikhara is. And again, the benefit of istikhara is that when a person uses this istikhara on a daily basis, then two things are happening. Number one, he is developing and fortifying his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by constantly relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number two, number one, by trusting on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and number two, by being pleased with whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides him towards. So two things are being reinforced. Number one is trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, number two is contentment. And that's all istikhara is. But once we understand, and now that we've understood it, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to use it on a daily basis, and inshallah we'll see that it'll prove to be very, very, very beneficial. I can say from my own experience that whenever I've used istikhara, alhamdulillah, it turned out, it really worked. It really helped me out. So inshallah, hopefully it works out the same for everyone. And, that's it, inshallah. Does anyone have any questions or comments or anything, Brother Rumi?
Going to the shopping, go and don't go. For example, I decided to buy the car A, which is terrible. And in that case, I'm going to search if the Honda is closed, I go to somewhere else to buy it.
Yeah.
I had my intention, I need to buy it. So I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give me the best of this car, help me out.
Exactly.
There is no sort of answer for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right?
Yeah, there's no such thing. Brother Rumi is asking that, what is the answer of istikhara? Right? What is the answer?
The answer I said is, doesn't show into the dream.
Exactly, right. It's just we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from our wrong decisions. Right? That's all it is.
Okay, the other thing you said here is the Prophet Adams. Does he used to perform istikhara? Istikhara came at the time of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Yeah.
And at the time of Adam, was istikhara exist at the time?
During the time of Adam alayhi salam? During the time of Adam alayhi salam, istikhara...
Because they were directly in contact with
Allah
subhanahu wa ta'ala. They asked all the angels to go down to Adam's, except the shaitan, he didn't go down. So does Adam al-Islam, does he perform istikhara at the time?
Did Adam alayhi salam perform istikhara? Yeah. For what?
No, he says this, the fortune of the son of Adam is... No, this means that from the good fortune of the son of, meaning human beings. Human beings. Son of Adam means, people. Yeah. So from the good fortune of people is that we perform istikhara, and from our bad fortune is that we leave out istikhara. Right? Meaning when
if we perform istikhara, then all we'll see is goodness in our life. But if we leave out istikhara, then we'll see, detriment and harm. That's what it is. So son of Adam means people, right? Yeah.
Another question.
Yeah.
Does Prophet ﷺ used to make istikhara for every step in his life, or it was done by the angel Jibreel?
Well, Jibreel alayhi was only responsible for giving Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wahi. As far as, like we said, istikhara is only for items which are mustahab, which are, permissible. So for things which are, farad, obligatory, then there was no need to make istikhara. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the dua itself, it says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us how to make istikhara. So obviously, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself would make istikhara in all his affairs. And again, going back to the hadith where we said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded us that we should always make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all our affairs and needs, even if it may be something as insignificant as salt. So again, istikhara is just a dua, So, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, always engaged in du'as of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
It comes to the hadith that we are supposed to call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we are in sajda. So why is it that we are not asked to recite this dua instead we do it after salah?
That's a good question. Yeah. That's a good question, but I really don't know. The hadith simply says after you perform your salah, then make the dua. The only difference of opinion over here is that amongst the scholars is, should you recite the dua after you've said the salam, or should you recite the dua after you've read at-tahiyyatu and all those other duas before you say the salam? Otherwise,
What's the answer for that?
Why the hadith does not say to...
What's the answer? Do you do the dua after the tashahhud?
Oh.
Before the salam or after the salam? I want to know the answer.
It's actually optional. Whatever, yeah. I would actually say it's better to read the dua after the salah, because that one part when you get to where you have to say your decision, you're going to say it in your language, So in our salah we speak, it's only in Arabic, so it's better to do it. Yeah, that's the best. But regarding your question, I'm not...
What was the question the gentleman asked? I didn't hear the question.
Oh, the question was that a person is closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he is in sajda. So why isn't the hadith commanding us to perform istikhara or read the dua while we are in sajda? Why is it saying that after we perform the salah, then we, then we should read the dua after the salah? So maybe because of that also, that when you get to that part, أَنَّ هَذَا الْأَمْرَ, where you're actually supposed to verbally say exactly what your affair is, what your decision is. It may be something, because in salah, you're not allowed to speak regarding worldly affairs, right? You can make general du'as and stuff like that, but you can't, like this, the fuqaha, the scholars have mentioned, you can't make dua in your salah saying like, Allahumma zawwajni fulanatan, that, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, get me married to so-and-so girl, right? You can make a general dua, right? But you can't make specific dua which is considered, kalamun nas, is regular speech. So maybe that's one of the reasons. Yeah, but...
If we are doing extra nafal for this dua,
yeah.
and then we can do this dua in our sajda.
Yeah.
Because that's, we are doing for this purpose, right?
Well,
no?
If again, it goes back to saying the verbal decision. Yeah. So.
Yeah, my question from you is, do we need to recite this dua? Because we usually, whenever we do something, we always do recite nafil, and then we ask from Allah in any language. Do we need to? Because you cannot do this all the time.
Yeah. Well, necessarily speaking, it's not. You don't have to read the dua. If you simply say the meaning of the dua in your own language, it's fine. It'll suffice. But again, the best is when you utter the same words, the exact words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for maximum benefit and maximum results. Then you recite exactly what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited for optimum benefit.
I have a question. Like if you have two options, right? And sometimes you don't know which option you need to choose. But you are saying that you have to select the option first before you ask Allah.
Yeah.
Which means that Allah is incapable of providing you an answer, whether if you're confused in two things. And then when you select already by your own, then why you're relying on Allah, because you already make a decision and not relying on Allah to make a decision for you.
Well, see, if you had to say that you're going to let Allah make your decision, then how exactly are you going to determine that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made your decision for you?
It's because when you have two options, you are confused whether you go with option A or option B.
Well,
and then you make a dua, and then like somehow Allah guide you if by making things easy for you, and also by putting something or peace in your heart. Okay, go with this, and then you select it. That means it's from Allah and not from yourself. But if you already make a decision, that okay, I'm going for no matter what. I'm going for option A. And then if something go bad, I see because I ask Allah. Allah is
but that's exactly the purpose of Istikhaara. That if you've made a wrong decision, you follow it up with the Istikhaara, and you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect you from your wrong decision if the decision is incorrect. And another thing regarding Istikhaara, there's actually two parts of Istikhaara. One part of Istikhaara is actually making mashwara and consulting with people. That's one aspect of Istikhaara. Making mashwara with people, and the second aspect of Istikhaara is making mashwara with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this dua. So again, back to your question, if a person makes the incorrect decision and he performs the Istikhaara, then that's exactly the purpose of Istikhaara, that we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if this decision of mine is incorrect, if it's harmful for me, then keep me away from it, keep me safe, right?
Basically, like, once you make a decision, it's giving you confidence in your decision.
Exactly, yeah. So, but does that answer your question?
But if you have two options, you're confused, then this is still.
If you're confused, if you have two options, if you're confused, then like I was mentioning, there's the two types of Istikhaara where you go and consult people. You seek advice from people. You ask them, I have these two options. Can you give me advice? Can you, give me your opinion on exactly what I should do? Even after that, if you are still confused, then make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the purpose of Istikhaara is not for you to come to arrive to a decision. The purpose of Istikhaara is to protect you from the harmful decisions, from our harmful decisions, right? So it will be two different aspects.
So it's like you make, whatever you're deciding on.
Yeah.
You decide, for example, you said about the phone.
Yeah.
You choose the phone. You're going with that, but you should wait after you make Istikhaara to see how it is going to go to make the final decision.
You don't necessarily have to wait, so to say, meaning like, you perform.
You're saying that Allah will keep you away from that. It's not good for you.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, you should wait. You should not go ahead and, asking Allah to keep you away from the whatever, if it's good for you and, it's not good for you to keep you away, and then it's good for you, make it easy for you. So you should wait maybe a couple of days before making the decision.
You can wait, but if it's not meant to be, then if you immediately go, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect you from it, So there's no really need for to wait. And another thing that I forgot to mention is regarding how many times should you perform Istikhaara. To perform Istikhaara, you simply need to do it once, right? But some people have said that, to perform it 3 times is mustahab, because when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would make dua, he would make dua for everything 3 times. But in the hadith, it's simply, just do it once. So, again, as soon as you perform your Istikhaara, there's really no need to wait. It's not necessary. If you want to wait, that's a different option. That's your personal choice. But if a person is in a rush, that, say for example, he's at a grocery store, and he has 2 items in front of him that he needs to he wants to purchase. He makes his decision, and he reads the Istikhaara, and then he goes ahead and buys whatever he wants to. And then, if it's bad for him, then something will happen that will protect him from it. Otherwise, it'll be made easy and simplified, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put barakah in it. So basically, that's it. Anyone else? Allahumma khirli wa khtarli means, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, khirli means, grant good for me, and wakhtarli means, and choose for me. So grant good for me and choose for me, meaning, just guide me. Yeah.
So, if you have time, you're supposed to do the longer version.
Yeah.
The shorter version is just for like if you're on the run or something.
Yeah. I mean, you can read the shorter version. That's not an issue. But again, it's you want to be as closest to the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I mean, this in itself is also established from a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the longer dua is what's been given more preference. This is the dua with which Jabir radiallahu anhu said that this dua was taught to us like how surahs were taught. So this has more emphasis, and it may prove to be more beneficial. So that's the thing. So I think we can wrap it up and then perform our salah, and then afterwards, we'll have our second program, inshallah. Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Alhamdulillah. And next month's family night is another interesting topic. It's regarding dreams, because many of us, especially the women, they have dreams and then they get, they want to know what the dreams mean. So, next month we're going to speak about dreams, what the hadith, what the Quran says about dreams, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik.